Hello and welcome to Academy on Air, brought to you by Google Partners. In this session, we're going to be looking at mobile measurement and how you can value the full value of mobile, measure the full value of mobile, I should say. So I am David Whelan. I'm working on the EMEA Mobile Product Solution Specialist team.
And my name is Eileen, and I work as a measurement and attribution specialist with our advertisers across the UK. And I've been working in the area of measurement and attribution at Google for over 4 years now.
Excellent. So if this is your first time to view, welcome. Hopefully we can teach you something new. If you've been here before, you'll probably recognize a couple of these points that have been done in the previous session. So previously we've looked at optimizing and providing a good mobile experience for users. So looking at UX, UI, and M-speed. We've looked previously at the importance of being present on mobile. We've looked at how we can invest and set a strategy to capture profitable user actions. Today we're going to be looking, as I said, at measurement and valuing actions from mobile users. Again, if you haven't seen any of these sessions before, I would highly recommend checking out the Google Partners live stream channel on YouTube and taking a look at those other sessions. They're really valuable and they'll bring you up to speed on what we're talking about today. But from a measurement perspective, which is our focus for today, we will be taking you through how to measure the full value of mobile using this really simple, straightforward narrative. So we will be looking at measuring all conversions, attributing conversion credit across different touch points, and then finally how we can take this data and insight and actually act on it and do decisions based on bidding, targeting, and budgets.
So for those of you interested in joining future sessions, how this is going to play out over the next couple of weeks on Academy on Air is that obviously today we're going to be talking about the importance of measurement with a view particularly on measuring the value of mobile and everything that's specifically relevant to your mobile advertising. Then next week, we're going to be talking about, if I can get the clicker, next week we're going to be talking about how you can attribute correctly across the entire customer journey. So from that first interaction that someone has with your brand, right down to the point of purchasing. That'll be next week on Academy on Air. And then in 2 weeks' time, we'll be covering the ACT piece. So that's essentially how you can use all of your great data and your new attribution model to actually act on all that data. So that's doing things like your targeting and your budgets across different channels, and also how you can take advantage of Google's auto bidding solutions like enhanced CPC, target CPA, all of that great stuff. So that's all coming over the next few weeks on Academy on Air.
Excellent. So some really interesting stuff to look forward to there. So let's kick things off. You're probably not going to be surprised to hear that more than half of all web traffic is now coming from smartphones and tablets. So in recent years, we've actually had an explosion of the number of devices being used by our customers, especially around smartphone and tablets. And in certain countries and markets, we've actually seen where smartphone searches have actually started to overtake desktop searches. So with this in mind, we've seen a fundamental shift in the customer path to purchase. With the rise of all of these different devices, we now see that 75% of online adults actually start an activity on one device, but then continue or finish it on another. So if you can imagine, with all of these different devices now in play, as marketers and as advertisers, we need to be aware of all of these different behaviors, and we need to actually adapt our own approach in terms of measuring and analyzing these different touch points. So I think a really good analogy to use here is measure along the funnel. And what do we mean by that? Well, the funnel actually provides us with a really good visual representation of the modern digital consumer path to purchase. So we have the awareness piece on top. This is where the most of our audience live. And as we go down to the bottom through the content and through the evaluation phases, we're essentially getting narrower. We're seeing a drop off of users, but we're seeing kind of an increase in the commercial intent of these users. And finally, we get down to the bottom, which is where our users are actually converted into customers. And this is where they purchase, or this is where they sign up to a leads form, or whatever that might look like for your business. Now, it's important also as a marketer to identify along this funnel and along these different stages, what are the critical KPIs that we need to be measuring at the different phases of this funnel. So to give you a better idea and to make things a lot easier for you, we have brought to you this framework of see, think, do, care. So this might be something that you're familiar with, but in either case, I'll bring you through it now. So within the C phase, we have the awareness piece. So if you can imagine, this is the top of the funnel. And while I'm going through this, I'm going to be using the example of a kitchen appliances company. This is something that I've actually gone through the purchasing cycle of recently. So it's actually fresh and top of mind. But when we're looking at the C phase and we see that this is the largest addressable qualified audience for that advertiser. So for our kitchen appliance advertiser, this might look like simply people who cook. Now, what are the metrics and KPIs that are important to measure at that stage? Well, we might actually look at percentage of new visits. It could simply be visits, whatever is important at that phase for that particular audience, something to think about.
So would this be, Dave, like where you do things like your branding activity and your video advertising at this stage?
Exactly. So this typically might look like your display advertising on GDN, right, or you might be running a TrueView campaign on YouTube. So building that awareness amongst this engaged audience.
Perfect.
And again, this is the largest addressable qualified audience. In the next stage, think we're going to be looking at the largest addressable qualified audience with some commercial intent. And I say some here because these people are in the evaluation stage. They're considering the product. For our kitchen appliance companies, this is going to look like people who are thinking about getting a new kitchen appliance. Okay. So this is like an important thing for us to consider here. So for that company, the key metrics might look like click-through rate from ads. They might look like page depth on the site. You might even look at things like, for my case, how long did I spend on a particular product page?
Right. So really getting into the details of the product,
really getting
cart, things like that.
Exactly, those types of things. Anything that kind of reflects that consideration or evaluation, we need to be tracking. We need to be capturing all of that information. Next up, we have the do phase. Again, this is where we turn users into customers. This is the business end of the funnel. For our kitchen appliance company, this looks like people who want to buy a food processor now. So quite simply put, the metrics that we need to be looking at here are things around number of conversions, return on investment, profitability, even looking at the ones that got away. So checkout abandonment rate, things like that. Anything that's going to give us a little bit more information, a little bit more insight onto this audience and how we can improve that process. Finally, we have care. Now, care is absolutely paramount to all of this and to every single advertiser, because this is where our customers are actually returning back to our business, back to our website. These are the guys who are going to advocate on behalf of us, share a good story to our friend, become loyal customers, and evangelize on our behalf. So it's important that we set up the metrics here that we can actually measure that off of. So to think of a couple, that might look like lifetime value of a customer, that might look at the likelihood for them to recommend to a friend.
Okay. So like good reviews or repeat visitors. Gotcha.
Simply put, on Google Analytics, I would be checking out the returning visitors segment. All of these things kind of reflecting the care section on this. So what we've done here is we've gone through the See, Think, Do, Care framework and looked at the different metrics and KPIs that we need to be measuring along that funnel. So providing some context. Now, with that in mind, what we're going to run through for the remainder of this session is looking at the different conversion types that advertisers really need to be measuring on AdWords. And all of these are available on AdWords. I'm going to be bringing you through phone calls. Eileen here is going to be bringing you through view-through conversions and cross-device conversions. And then we're going to look at mobile web conversions and store visits.
Yeah, so it might seem like a bit of a mouthful, but we're going to go through all of these in detail. So by the end of this this hangout, you'll have a great idea about how to set these up and how to use all these metrics in the best possible way.
Excellent. So it's going to be really actionable.
Yes,
we're going to be able to bring something away from this, which is what I love. Okay, so to start things off with the very basics, mobile web conversions. So again, this may sound basic, but you'd be amazed at the amount of advertisers out there who actually haven't properly even tagged up their mobile site or haven't considered that it might be different from their desktop site. And therefore, these are the things that we need to consider. So what does this look like within the conversion settings tab? Well, I'm going to give you just a quick bit of insight into kind of why you should be filling this out properly and why you should have it properly configured to capture all of the necessary information. So to start off at the top here, we have conversion name. Very, very important that you actually allocate a name to the conversion just for your own reporting sake, so you don't get confused between different types of conversions. For instance, if there's a different product that you want to keep separate from your other products, that those sales are measured differently. Next up, we have category. So previously, or even in a lot of industries, our advertisers actually rely on purchases as a type of conversion, but there's so many more industries out there, so many more different types of business models and advertisers, so we need to cater for that. So aside from sales and purchases, we can also have leads, we can have sign-up forms, we can even have a certain page on the website, and we can measure as a conversion when someone actually visits that page. Next up, we have value. Value here is extremely important, especially for the likes of the retail sector, where we're able to actually attribute a value, a monetary value to a specific conversion. But it doesn't even have to be the value of a sale. Think about it as you can identify what is the value of a lead. So say, for instance, if a phone call, the average result of a phone call to your business might be €20, £20 or $20 or whatever it might be. What we can do here is then assign that to that particular type of conversion, and we will not just be able to measure the volume of conversions, but we will also be able to measure the monetary impact and what that brings in terms of revenue for your business. Next up, we have source. So multiple different sources that we can actually measure conversions from. So we can look at measuring conversions from, obviously what we have here is the website, but we can also look at apps, we can look at phone calls, we can even look at importing conversions.
From analytics.
From analytics, exactly. So next, count. Now we're going to go into a little bit more detail on this because it might be a little bit more tricky to understand, but we have two options here. We can count every conversion per click or interaction, or we can choose to count one conversion per click or interaction. And to give you a bit of an example, or to kind of role play this, imagine for instance, I'm a customer of an advertiser who wants to measure a sign-up form perhaps. Now, if I go onto the website and if after I click through the ad and sign up to a form or fill that form out and then click submit, that's if I choose to measure every conversion, that'll measure every time I fill out that form. So even if I fill it out 5 times, that'll equal 5 conversions. However, if it's important to the business that we're not deduplicating these conversions, and if I only want to measure one person per form, then even if I fill out 5 forms, if one is selected, they will count me as one conversion because essentially may result in one sale.
So say, for example, if you're an insurance company, if you're shopping around for car insurance, you might go back to the same website and fill out a quote form 5 times. But if it's not a monetary value, you only want to count that once because you're only going to buy insurance once.
I'm only going to be worth one sale to that insurance company. And therefore, even if I fill out 10 insurance forms, you should only value me as one.
So for any kind of leads or quotes or signups, you should count just one conversion per click. Okay. You've nailed it. And what about if you're like a retailer and I click on an ad and I go on and I purchase, a pair of jeans, and then I go back and I purchase, let's say a nice pair of shoes. What would you do in that scenario? I
would say in that scenario, I think we should measure every conversion. Okay. Because it's a monetary value, because it's a sale. We want to measure every single conversion along there, so we have an idea. When we look at our conversion columns within the AdWords interface, we know how many sales we've actually driven from a particular keyword or ad group or campaign.
Perfect. So basically, if there's a revenue value for a conversion, you should count every conversion.
Yes.
But if it's just a lead, you only need to count one. Is that a fair?
It's a really good rule of thumb to follow.
Perfect.
Nice. So next up, we have conversion windows. So this is the window that we can select in order to identify the length of time in which AdWords will hold on to or count a conversion for. So our options here are from anywhere from 7 days, 1 week, all the way up to 90 days. So it's more beneficial for a company with a shorter sales cycle to actually have a shorter conversion window, whereas a company with a much more expensive product that maybe warrants more investigation, more evaluation, maybe competitor analysis, it's worthwhile for them to have a longer conversion window, because essentially it's going to take longer for a customer to convert on that particular website. So again, anywhere from 1 week all the way up to 90 days we can select.
Okay, so say if you're like a fast food retailer, then you might be someone who just has a 7-day window, because nobody researches their takeaway 2 weeks in advance. But maybe
surprised, but yes,
we do. But then I guess if you're selling like expensive holidays or a piece of furniture, then people could take up to 90 days to research that.
Absolutely. If you can imagine, if you're going to be paying 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 for a brand new kitchen, you're going to consider that a lot more than your bag of chips that you're going to get in the local takeaway.
Yeah.
So all of these, it caters for so many different types of business models, but just important to understand what your customer buying cycle looks like, how long their journey takes, and then apply that conversion window based on that. So next up, we're going to have cross-device conversions. I'm going to hand you over to Eileen.
Okay, perfect. So cross-device conversions, and when we're talking about conversions here, we're pretty much talking about the same conversions that Dave just went through. So someone completing a purchase on your site, or a sign-up, or a quote. So it's the same kind of conversion. However, where cross-device conversions are different, and what it means is obviously these are conversions where someone starts their customer journey on one device and then they finish on another. So kind of the hint is in the name. A cross-device conversion is when someone moves across devices. So an example here would be, say, when someone, say a user clicks on an ad on their mobile device for flowers for Mother's Day, and they have a look at the price and the delivery time, but they don't purchase straight away. Instead, they come back on their desktop at a later point and then they complete the purchase. So within AdWords, that would count as a cross-device conversion. And this is particularly relevant for mobile users because, as we saw earlier, people do move across devices an awful lot. But what the customer journey tends to look like more for mobile is that people will do a lot of the initial research and the initial kind of fact-finding on mobile. But a lot of the time, they might be out and about, they might be on the go and not in a position to, whip out the credit card and complete the purchase right there and then. So what will happen instead is that they'll come back and then complete that purchase on a desktop.
So actually an interesting insight that I read there recently was now that the average digital consumer path to purchase typically has over 5 different touch points. So all of these touch points now create a different challenge that we need to be able to account for and measure.
Exactly. And it's not just like that's a very simple example of a customer journey. What you could actually happen is someone visiting a site, like if you're booking a holiday, for example, I know I'll visit a site on mobile 3 times and then I'll send a link to my boyfriend and he'll look at it on desktop and then I'll look at it on mobile and then we might book on desktop. So it's a lot more complicated than just one single touch point. And that's what cross-device conversions is so powerful for. You can see that journey as they move across all the different devices.
Right.
So this is it's not just device by device. So obviously the example here is, users within mobile web browsers and desktop web browsers. Cross-device conversions also works across apps as well. So what we see a lot of the time as well is that, a lot of retailers who have, for example, apps will have credit cards saved to the app. So what a user might do is, research a piece of clothing on the desktop where they have lots of room to look at the clothing up in a large size and try it out on the model and see it from all the different angles. But then they'll go back onto the app on their mobile phone where they have their credit card saved, and they might purchase they might purchase their pair of jeans on the app. So again, this is a journey that goes across different devices. And again, we can track cross-device conversions for this as well. So how does this fantastic data set work? So how do we bring you this data of users moving across devices? So there's 3 main steps involved in bringing you cross-device reporting in your AdWords account. The first is the fact that we have a great signed-in user base. So what that means is that basically we have users who are signed in to Google platforms like their Chrome browser. They might be signed into their Gmail account or their YouTube account, and they're signed in across multiple different properties. So they'll be signed into their mobile phone, signed into their laptop. And what this allows us to do is, because those users have agreed to share data with us, we can then see when they click on ads on one device and click on ads on other devices, and then where they actually complete their purchase. So to give you some idea about the size of our signed in user base, we have over 1 billion users signed in on 7 different properties like like Chrome and YouTube and Gmail across all of our global markets. And in most of our markets, we have over 30% of users are signed in across multiple devices. So this gives us a huge pool of users that we can get great insights as to what their cross-device behavior is. But obviously, the second step is, what about the users who aren't signed in, where we don't have that same view on what their cross-device behavior is?
Right.
So in those cases, what we do is we take the behavior of users who are signed in on Google, and we then extrapolate that cross-device behavior for the entire population of users when they're not signed in. And we have a very sophisticated algorithm that allows us to do that. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on how that algorithm works on the next slide. And then the final thing is that when we have our cross-device number and we have that extrapolation, we then surface that data in your reporting in AdWords. And we only surface the data when we're very, very confident that it's accurate. So it's actually quite a conservative number, the cross-device conversions that you see in AdWords. So say, for example, we don't have enough data to make the extrapolation correctly, or we don't have enough data to pass privacy thresholds. What'll happen then is that we just won't show any cross-device data at all, rather than show a number that we're not confident about. So the data that you see in AdWords is it's actually probably more conservative in terms of cross-device conversions. So let's go into a little bit more detail on that second step. So how do we extrapolate cross-device conversions for users who aren't signed in on Google? So we do this using a number of different things. So let's say we have our example earlier on of users who are signed in across multiple devices. So in different markets, say in France versus Germany versus the UK, we're going to have different numbers of users signed in, and those users are going to behave differently across different devices. So for example, in the UK, we might have a very high amount of cross-device activity. So we'll take that into account when we extrapolate across users in the UK. But in Germany, and this is all just hypothetical, in Germany, we might have a very low amount of people who move across devices before purchasing. So in that case, we will take that also into account in the algorithm as we extrapolate out for different users. So we look at all of the country-specific data, but then we get even more specific and we look at how users behave across devices for your landing page and your conversion types. So obviously different business models are going to have different kinds of cross-device behavior. So if you're, say, a business-to-business advertiser and you're selling, let's say, computer software, there's probably very little cross-device behavior there because most people are just going to research and purchase on a desktop. But then maybe if you are selling consumer electronics, there might be quite a long path across different devices. So again, we take all these things into account as we're extrapolating data. And then finally, before we actually surface that data within the account, we need to be 95% confident that the data is accurate. And that 95% confidence threshold, so that's the same confidence threshold that medical trials use before they approve drugs. So it's a very, very high level of confidence that we need to reach before we'll show any data within your account.
Okay, interesting. So relatively speaking, then this is kind of like top in terms of the industry, maybe.
Exactly. It's pretty much the gold standard in terms of confidence intervals.
Excellent.
And then the final thing just to bear in mind about extrapolating across the entire population is that this is something that every ad network does. So even if there's a network where, say, 100% of users may be signed into the platform, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're signed in across all devices. So you may be operating a platform where, say, an ad network, say, where 100% of people are signed in on mobile. But then if people are purchasing on desktop, they may never have signed in on desktop. And so people still need to extrapolate. So basically every ad network that you work with that provides cross-device conversions uses extrapolation to get all that data. But what we feel is that we're the most transparent about how we do that. And we also have the most concern for consumer privacy because we never look at cross-device conversions for users who haven't agreed to share that data with us. So users specifically have to agree to share their data with us before we'll use it to report on cross-device conversions.
I get you. Okay, so interesting. But this 95% confidence, this is what we're attributing to kind of the reason why we have very conservative conversion numbers as well.
Exactly. If we were only 80% sure that those numbers were accurate, we just wouldn't show them rather than show a number that we're not totally happy with.
Right. Okay.
So just to sum up, I guess, the power and the importance of the data that you get with cross-device conversion. So the first reason that it's really fantastic, it's a really fantastic source of insight is just the scale that we work on. So there's only about 3 or 4 companies in the world that would have a comparable signed-in user base to Google. Like I said, we have 1 billion users across the world signed in across 7 different properties. And within each individual market in EMEA, in almost every market, we have more than 30% of users who are signed in across multiple devices. devices. So we have a huge user base in every market. And the second then, like I said, is the methodology that we use to extrapolate out. We're very transparent about the methodology that we do use. We're very concerned about user privacy. So we only use data that users have agreed to share with us. And we're very conservative in how we surface that data in AdWords. So only when we're 95% confident will you actually see cross-device conversions in AdWords. And then the final great advantage that cross-device conversions has is that it works across all Google platforms. So basically, whether you're advertising on search, on shopping, on the GDN, you'll see cross-device conversions across all of those platforms. And you'll also see it whether or not your users are, shopping on the web and the browser platform, or whether they're in an app environment. We can show cross-device conversions there as well.
Good stuff.
So where do you find cross-device conversions within AdWords? So it's really, really simple. We report on cross-device conversions at a campaign, an ad group, and a keyword level. And you can find it by going to the columns tab, and then you'll see the red arrow there. You can select conversions, and then on the next menu bar, you can select cross-device conversions. And once you add that column, as you'll see on the right-hand side there, you'll have an extra column that says cross-device conversions. And typically what you'll see, like I said earlier, is that you'll probably have more cross-device conversions for your mobile campaigns or your mobile traffic versus your desktop traffic, because that's where people tend to move across devices a bit more. And also, as of about 6 to 9 months ago, we've also included cross-device conversions just automatically in the conversions column. So when you're doing things like automated bidding within AdWords, or you're setting your mobile bid modifiers, you're automatically taking cross-device conversions into account and optimizing towards them as well, which is great. So this is an example from Shutterfly, who used cross-device conversions to grow their overall business and their overall sales. So Shutterfly, they were fairly confident that users were kind of researching on mobile and then purchasing later on desktop, but they could never actually have the data to back it up. So they weren't able to do anything with this sort of hunch that they had. So when they finally started looking at cross-device conversions, what they did was they started looking at cross-device conversions specifically for all their different campaigns. And what they found was that actually mobile was performing much better for them than they'd originally thought when they didn't look at cross-device conversions. And what this allowed them to do was then to enable 100% of their keywords to appear on mobile devices. And they were also then able to increase the bid adjustment on their mobile devices, because now they could see that actually they were driving value for the business. So as a result of this, because they were able to see cross-device conversions on mobile and then actually optimize for them properly, what they found was that overall on their non-branded search, they grew their sales by 15%. And for mobile on non-branded search, they actually grew their conversions by 60%. So they had a huge uplift in their business from just optimizing correctly towards cross-device conversions.
I love this because I think this perfectly reflects the measurement narrative that we're going with today. So the measure, attribute, act. So to set up the proper measurement for their conversions, cross-device conversions, they attributed properly for mobile, and then they invested and changed their targeting off the basis of that.
Exactly. And I'd say, like, if any of you are watching today and you haven't yet looked into cross-device conversions, or you're not using them correctly, it could be an enormous opportunity for your business to actually take advantage of that data. Absolutely. Especially in the run-up to the big Christmas season.
Yeah.
So one final note about cross-device conversions is where to find them. So essentially, if you're using the AdWords conversion tracking tag, that's fantastic. You'll have access to all of that cross-device data that we've just gone through. Unfortunately, at this time, if you're depending on GA imported goals, you won't have access to cross-device conversions. However, in the new year, in early 2018, we are launching Google Attribution, which will rely on Google Analytics data, but it will also have cross-device conversions available for it will also have cross-device conversions available. So, if you are using GA imported goals at the moment, don't despair. Early next year, we are bringing out a solution that will bring cross-device conversions to you as well.
Can't wait.
I know, me neither. Okay, perfect. So let's move on then to view-through conversions. So again, what are view-through conversions? And the explanation again is in the name here. So a view-through conversion is when someone sees your ad, they don't click on it, and then they later complete a purchase. And this is really important if you're running activity that you're not necessarily measuring through clicks. So what do I mean by this? And this is kind of going back to the funnel that you talked about earlier on, Dave. So if you're thinking about that see, think, do customer journey. In the C phase, what you're trying to do is you're trying to run branding activity, you're trying to raise awareness. So this is where you're doing a lot of display activity on the GDN, you're doing a lot of YouTube activity.
Right.
And this is supposed to act like all branding activity is supposed to act. You're not necessarily intending that someone will purchase straight away, but instead that they see the image, they recognize your brand, they start to kind of think about it in the back of their mind.
That awareness amongst your
so that when
users,
they're like in the market for your product, you're top of mind. They know your brand because you've already raised that awareness. And it's like, say, how TV advertising works or billboard advertising works. Like no one clicks on a TV ad and purchases straight away. It's to create awareness of the brand. But why this is particularly important for views is that obviously at this stage, people aren't necessarily going to click on those ads. They're just going to look at them. So you need to be able to measure what happens when someone sees your ad and what the value of that is later on in terms of purchases. And that's where view through conversions comes in. And I'd say it's particularly important for mobile as well, because so many people spend far more hours of their leisure time now browsing their mobile device than they do even watching television. So in terms of the amount of kind of hours of time that you get in front of your audience, mobile is a great way to reach them with that branding message. So view through conversions. So like I said, a view through conversion measures when someone sees your ad and purchases later. And it's really important for display because we know that on the internet, only 4% of users click on display ads. So really, you need to be measuring what's happening after the view, not what's happening after the click.
And of course, this goes back to what you were saying about viewability and how we measure that, and the fact that they're actually, with Google, seeing a lot more of the ad before it's counted as a view, right? So that's 50% of the ad over 1 second.
So that's a really great point. So how do we count what a view is for a view through conversion, or when we track an impression on AdWords? How do we define that? And as you probably know, ad viewability has been a really hot topic in the digital advertising industry for the last year or two. So essentially how we define an ad view, so when we track a view through conversion or an impression, what we mean is that 50% of your ad has been on display for at least 1 second for the display network. And if you're advertising on YouTube, it means that someone's seen your video for at least 2 seconds. So essentially, when we track a view or a view through conversion, you can be really confident that the user has actually seen your ad. And like basically it means that they're not just kind of scrolling through a feed and 1 pixel has loaded up. So they've definitely seen the ad if we're tracking a view. So how do we track view through conversions? And I think this is really interesting just to understand, when you see a view through conversion, what does that actually mean? So again, let's look at a customer journey here. So let's say we have a user who sees a display impression and then they click on a search ad and then they see a video impression and then they click on a shopping ad. In this case, what would happen is that we wouldn't track any view through conversions. We would just track a conversion for that shopping click. So when you look at view through conversions, just remember that it still is last touch point. So basically, if someone sees an ad and then clicks on one of your ads after that, the click will get all the credit for the conversion. So all the view through conversions that you see in AdWords are totally incremental to all your click conversions on search and display. This may not be ideal. You might want to share credit across all touch points in that customer journey. So if that's something that's interesting to you, and hopefully it is, definitely tune in next week for the Attribution Academy on Air. So when would you actually see a view through conversion? So let's take this example. So let's say someone sees a display impression and then they see a video impression and then they go on and they convert. So in this case, what would happen is, because there's no click after that video impression, what we'd see is a view through conversion for that video impression in AdWords. But again, because it's last touch and we never duplicate reporting within AdWords, you'll only see 1 view through conversion. So you'll see a view through conversion for the video impression, but you won't see a view through conversion for that display impression.
So this is a question I get all the time actually from advertisers, is how do I know that when someone has seen the ad and then has later clicked on an ad, how do we know that we're not double counting here? But yeah, clearly we can see that we've deduplicated that.
Exactly. So the answer is that we'll never double count anything. If someone clicks on an ad after seeing your video impression or your display impression, we'll just give the conversion the click and we won't record a view through conversion.
Good stuff.
So it's all unique conversions in AdWords. And then the final example, which is a little bit different, is if someone watches a full video view, so they pay for the view. So basically what would happen in that case is, let's say you're advertising on YouTube and someone actually doesn't skip through the ad, they watch the entire ad until it completes and you pay for the video view. What would happen in that case, because you've paid for the view, we treat it the same as a click and we just record a regular conversion, not a view through conversion in that case. So for full video views, you'll see regular conversions rather than view throughs. But if someone only sees 2 seconds of the ad and then they skip it and they convert later, that would be a view-through conversion for video. So that's how view-through conversions are defined.
Nice.
So this is an example of, I guess, how you can use view-through conversions, just to bring it to life a bit more about how you can use this kind of metric to drive your digital strategy. So Fujifilm in Japan, they moved the measurement of their upper funnel activity from a click-based strategy to a view-based strategy. So essentially, they were targeting kind of mid-funnel audiences. They were targeting things like in-market segments across the display network. So basically, it was more of a branding exercise than trying to actually drive purchases. So they moved away from measuring clicks altogether. They created lovely display creatives in HTML5 that were lovely and interactive and intended to be seen, not clicked on. And they started bidding on cost per impression rather than cost per click. And they moved away from measuring on click and measuring on view-through conversions instead. So essentially, they moved their upper funnel strategy entirely away from click-based measurement and completely towards view-based measurement, which is ideal for brand. And what they saw as a result of this, that they drove a 127% increase in conversions, which is huge, 32% more new users to their website, and they actually found that their increase in their site searches, so searches on their site, went up by 65%. So when they actually optimized towards, getting in front of eyeballs instead of optimizing towards clicks, they were much more effective in their branding and their awareness campaigns. So how do you see view-through conversions in AdWords? So the first thing that you need to do is set up how you want to measure view-through conversions. So again, this is going back to the conversion settings that Dave talked about earlier. So if you go to Tools and Conversions and then the settings, you can decide how long you want to track between someone seeing your ad and then converting, what the cutoff point is for actually tracking a view-through conversion. So by default, that's set to 1 day, to 24 hours. So when someone sees your ad, they need to go to the site and convert within 24 hours for us to track a view-through conversion. Now, if you want, you can set that for a longer period of time, anytime up to 30 days. So it's really up to you and your business model as to how long you want to set that. By default, 24 hours is the window that someone needs to convert within if they've seen your ad. And then finally, you can add a new column to your AdWords reporting that includes view-through conversions alongside your regular kind of click conversions in your reporting. So to do that, you just go to Modify Columns, and then at the bottom there, you can see you select view-through conversions, and that'll give you a new column for your reporting. So that might look something like this. So let's say you've got 3 display campaigns, you've got 2 remarketing campaigns, and then you've got an in-market branding campaign. So the remarketing campaigns in this example, you can see they're driving more conversions through clicks. They've got a good CPA, but the branding in-market campaign at the bottom is actually performing quite poorly. It has a bad CPA. So in this case, a marketer might think, well, this campaign is doing nothing. I'm going to turn it off. If you then add view-through conversions as a column, what you can see is actually that in-market campaign is driving a high amount of view-through conversions. So actually it is valuable. It is driving conversions. It's working well. So I'd really, really recommend for any of you who are doing any kind of display activity, do add that view-through conversion column and start looking at view-through conversions as well as click conversions within your AdWords account.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So just a quick recap on what we've done so far. So we've looked at the mobile website conversions. Then you kindly brought us through the view-through conversions, and we also did cross-device conversions. So there are conversion types that I guess we would associate mainly with website conversions, website activity. However, we know that there are actually other types of conversions outside of website, which are offline, that we should be measuring in order to capture for the full value of mobile. So one of those is calls. So calls are becoming increasingly important to advertisers. We've seen that 70% of people have actually opted to call an advertiser from the search results page. 20% of people opt to call after they have visited a website. So these are powerful enough statistics. And based on that, we really need to make sure that we're properly configured on our AdWords side in order to take advantage of this, capture all of that data, and then optimize and act on top of that. So what does that look like? Where do we start? Firstly, quite simply, this might sound very basic, but we need to make it easy for customers to call. So there's 2 ways in which we can do that. We need to make sure that we're implementing call extensions across all of our ad groups and campaigns in order to enable customers to click to call directly from the search ad. So like I was saying there, 70% of people actually opt to call from this point, from the search results page. It's imperative that we're there, we're present when they decide to do that. Secondly, we can also leverage a relatively new type of ad format called call-only campaigns. And this is important for any types of businesses or advertisers out there who are only concerned with driving phone calls, whether you're that locksmith, whether you're a takeaway, anything in which you're looking to drive phone calls as leads. This is the perfect type of campaign for you to actually use. Now, it's not just enough that we're there and we're present, we also need to be able to measure these calls. So how do we measure the calls? Well, quite simply, we can use the Google forwarding number to do this. So what this looks like is it's a dynamically generated phone number which can appear either on your ads, so within that click to call extension, or we can actually also use it on the website either. So it'll dynamically generate while your user is actually on your website. From this dynamically generated number, we can actually route it through to the advertiser's phone number. So essentially, we will measure the number of times that these Google forwarding numbers are called, but also not alone that, we can also measure the start time, the end time. Therefore, we can derive the duration of the call. We can look at whether it was sourced from the search ad or whether it was sourced from the website. We can tell whether it was on mobile. So all of these different metrics that we can actually use to measure the types of calls that we're driving from our search ads. And best of all, it's really cost effective. So there's no other fees associated with the Google forwarding number. It's simply just pay the cost per click. So very, very cost effective here.
Great. And so within AdWords then, if you have this set up, so you'll see all of your different campaigns and then when people are converting on the site, but then you'll also see all of the individual calls that are being driven by your ads and on your website as well. Is that how it works?
Exactly, right down to a keyword level. So that's why it's really, really powerful in terms of that attribution aspect. Not only that, but another benefit of this, because this was a question again that I got from a lot of different advertisers, is it possible for us to show a local number in terms of that dynamically generated number? So will the Google forwarding number show as a local number to a local person who is looking for looking at our website? The answer is yes. So we show local numbers to those people in the local area.
Great. So you're not going to see like a strange kind of foreign looking number that you might be afraid to click on in case it costs lots of money. It looks like a normal local number.
Completely, because we realized that this was the number one deterrent that caused people to actually discontinue a phone call. So we want to take them right through all the way of the phone call, and the best way to do this is simply by providing local numbers.
Great. Okay, so store visits. So kind of continuing on the theme of everything that happens with your business that doesn't necessarily happen on the website. And obviously visiting a physical store is one of those things. So, you know, if you're a bricks and mortar business, you have a website and you do sell products online, but you also have stores in various cities across the country, then you really want to care about how people are discovering that store and how they can, you know, use all of your digital advertising to drive people in store. So there's a couple of main strategies that you need to be aware of to make sure that you're using your advertising to drive people to store. And before I get into all these strategies, I'd say this is obviously particularly important for mobile advertising. Just like with calls, when you think about people visiting your store, say someone is out and about, they're Christmas shopping, they're looking for, let's say, gifts for dad, and they type that into their mobile phone. You really want to be one of those stores that's there saying, I have a special offer in store and my store is only 50 feet away and I've got directions to it. You know, you really want to be visible at that point when people are out and about searching for different products on the high street. And that's really where sort of store optimization comes into its own. And again, where mobile in particular can drive an awful lot of value. So a couple of the things that you want to be thinking about when you're using mobile to drive people to purchase in your store is, first of all, making sure you're targeting people in the right locations. So wherever you have a store located, you want to make sure in the radius around that store, you've got particularly good targeting. So, you know, your bids are especially aggressive. So if someone is searching for your brand or they're searching for the product that you're selling, you're really, really visible in those search results when they search for you. The next thing then is obviously making sure that you have the right ad when they do search for you. So, if someone is in their own home in the middle of nowhere searching for your product, you want to direct them to your website, give them your website ad. However, if they're on a high street, a shopping street, looking for your brand, in that case, you want to have an ad that specifically directs them to your store. So talk about the special offers that you have in store, the services that you have in store, have a link, a site link set up that gives them directions to your store. So
you're using the type of language that's relevant then for local searches.
Exactly. So you need to use different messaging when you're driving people to the website versus when you're driving them to the store. And then obviously the final 2 points is that you want to measure the impact this is having. So we'll go through some of the ways that you can actually measure how people are finding your store online in the last couple of slides. So in order to, I guess, win at driving people to your store, there's a couple of things that you really need to do and get set up correctly. So the first thing there, as you'll see, is make sure you have a Google My Business account set up. So what this is your business page on Google Maps, where if someone is looking at a particular city map on Google Maps and they see your business, you have all the details about that business set up on your Google My Business page. And some of the things that you really want to have set up there are, the proper store address and directions to the store. You want to make sure you have your opening hours there and that they're correct. If there's a phone number or a website, make sure that all of that information is on your Google My Business account so that people know that you're there and you're open for business. The next thing that you really want to do is make sure you link your Google My Business account to your AdWords account. And then on all of your AdWords ads, have location extensions set up that show the location of your business. So say if someone is in London and they search for your store, not only do they have a link to your website, but they also have a location extension that shows where all your stores in London are, and they can click on directions to get there. And then once you have this set up, what you can actually do is set up specific bidding types that bid more for users who are closer to your store versus users who are further away. So for example, you can say if someone is within 1 kilometer of my store, I want to have a +100 bid modifier. But if someone is like 40 miles away from my store, we don't need to have any bid modifier for that location. So you can actually bid by location and distance once you have your location extensions set up. So that's great for helping people find your store when they're searching for you and they're close to your store. And the other product that can be really, really helpful for helping people discover your store and what you have for sale is local inventory ads. So how I think about local inventory ads is they're like shopping ads for your store. So instead of having a feed with all of the products that you have on your website, you actually have a feed that shows you all the products that you have available in your store. So again, if someone's on the high street and they're looking for a makeup gift set, for example, and you have that in store, we'll show them a local inventory ad saying, this beauty shop has makeup ads. They have 5 in store and they're 50 feet away. So it's very, very easy for them to know that you have the product that they're looking for and you have it in stock at that time.
Nice. So a really effective local format. But we would say that you need to keep on top of those feeds.
Yeah, just like
constantly maintaining them because it is what's available in real time in your store. You need to be able to kind of adjust based on how your sales are going.
Exactly. So just like with your shopping campaigns, you need to have that feed up to date for us to be able to show the local inventory ads. But these are just some of the ways that you can reach people who are searching and shopping, not online, but on the high street, but still looking for information online when they're on their phone. So obviously, once you have all of this set up, you're going to want to measure what the impact of it has been. So there's a few kind of tips and tricks for how you can actually measure what your online activity is doing to drive people in store. And the first is obviously, tracking who's clicking on those location extensions to get directions to visit your store. So you can track that very easily within AdWords. The next thing that you can do then is on your own website, you'll normally have, if you have physical stores, you should have a store locator section. So when people visit your website and they want to get directions to your store, there's a specific page they visit. So you should track goals for that also. And then finally, you can get a little bit more experimental and track things like coupon downloads. So let's say, for example, you have a special offer in your store where someone can go onto your website, get a coupon on their phone, and then show it in the store and get a discount on their purchase. You could use that kind of tracking to actually see how many people am I driving with my online ads to actually walk into my store and make a purchase. And then you can kind of do things like have experiments. So let's say, for example, we could set up specific geo-targeted campaigns around all of your different store locations, and within that, just go through all of the methods that I mentioned earlier. Have a location extension set up, have a store-specific ad with any special offers or advantages of visiting the store, and have bid by distance, so you're really, really visible for any user who's looking for your store and they're very close by. So these are kind of some of the ways that you can you can work to drive people from your online, use your online and your digital advertising, especially on mobile, to actually bring people into your store and buy your product in store as well. So I think that's pretty much it in terms of all of the measurement that you need to have set up for mobile. So pretty much what we've gone through, if we look through it, is the entire kind of purchase funnel. So obviously mobile is key for brand awareness and getting your brand out there. So you want to be tracking view-through conversions for all of the display that you're doing on mobile. And then for your mobile web store, obviously you want to be tracking conversions, and you want to be tracking cross-device conversions as well. So when someone starts a conversion on one device and finishes on another. And then kind of moving away from just the online-only world and onto the offline world. Again, mobile by its very nature is particularly powerful at driving phone calls. So Dave kind of talked you through how you can track how people are calling your business from your AdWords accounts, how they're calling from the website after clicking on an AdWords ad. And then finally, how you can actually bring people into your store from a mobile device, what the special campaigns that you can set up are that actually speak to people who are out and about and looking for a physical store to shop in. So getting all of these things set up will put you in a really, really good place to take full advantage of the value of mobile.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the end of the session. We'll have attribution next week, as I said. And now we have about 10 minutes for a Q&A. So I'm going to pop along to the question sheet and we'll see who has questions. Okay. So first question, how many days do you suggest to set up conversion window and view through conversions for hotel bookings? So I would say for hotel bookings, generally at least a minimum of 30 days would be a good amount of time to look at for hotel bookings. A great way that you can actually check this for yourself is if you go into your Google Analytics account and you go to conversions and then multi-channel funnels and then top paths, you'll actually see on average how long it takes between someone first visiting your site and booking. So that's a great report to look at.
The path lag time, isn't it, where they can see how long it takes?
The time lag report. Yeah, sorry, the time lag report. Yeah. But in general, I'd say for hotels, at least 30 days. Another question, Andrew.
Is there one there as well on that same one? So the view through conversions for hotels.
Okay. View through conversions, and is it better to have the same number of days for conversions and view through conversions? So I would generally say that it's better to be a bit more conservative in tracking view through conversions. So generally for click through conversions, 30 days is a good window. For hotel bookings, you may want to set that a little bit longer. Like if someone is booking a vacation away, I know I'm going on vacation to Thailand next week and I booked my hotel 2 months ago. So 60 days would have been a good window of time to book that for me, or to set a conversion window for that. For view through conversions, I would be more inclined to set a shorter window. So I'd say a 1 day window is actually quite a reasonable amount of a kind of a reasonable window for view through conversions, because if someone sees your ad and they don't purchase within a day or two, chances are they're still doing research. So you don't want to be overvaluing that either. Other question, will the new Safari 24-hour cookie storage length affect conversion tracking? So you'll all probably be aware within your AdWords account about the effects that the Safari changes in tracking will bring in. So essentially, to make sure that you're still tracking within a 30-day window, you need to make sure that you're using the full AdWords conversion tracking tag on your website. So you will lose conversions with this change on Safari if you're only using the conversion tracking pixel, which is just a part of the code. So what you need to do is make sure that you update all of your conversion tracking to include the full conversion tracking tag. And that then has a workaround for making sure that you track all conversions from Safari, no matter what, based on the look back window that you set, as opposed to that 24-hour window. Okay, do we have any other questions?
Is there another one coming through there?
There might be. Okay, there's no more questions yet. We'll wait maybe 30 seconds for any additional questions before we wrap it up.
Okay.
So I'm sure you guys are all kind of just digesting all the content that we've gone through. Absolutely. And making plans to get all of this fantastic tracking set up on your website. Yeah. If you get it set up in time for next week, you'll be able to implement all the great attribution solutions that I know the attribution team will be talking about at the Hang It On Air next week. Okay. What about the tendency of early bookings? In that case, isn't the view-through window limited? More and more people book months in advance. Isn't there a workaround? So I'd say even if people book in advance, what you're really thinking about isn't, like, if you're talking about hotels here, which I'm guessing that you are, like, it doesn't really matter about the distance between the booking and the hotel stay. What you're thinking about is like the window of the research and the booking. So I would generally say it depends on the kind of hotels even that you're offering. So if you're a budget hotel, maybe 2 months is plenty of time to have that look back window. If you're a luxury hotel where people spend an awful lot of money, they may research 3 months in advance. So I'd say almost the more expensive the hotel stay, the longer the look back window. But I would say 30 to 60 days is a good rule of thumb for look back windows for hotel bookings. And then in the case of view-through conversions, it really depends on how comfortable you are with including longer view-through conversions. So you definitely could include view-through conversions to look back for a week or 2 weeks, for example, if you feel that that's valuable.
I mean, it goes right up to 30 days.
It goes right up to 30 days, yeah.
Okay. But then again, you don't want to unfairly kind of credit certain display ads with conversions because it might be too far along the conversion path. So I think finding that sweet spot. Exactly. And it all depends on your content as well and what you're putting out there on display or on YouTube.
Exactly. If you've got a great ad and a fantastic message, then having a view-through window of 7 days is actually could be perfectly fine. Yeah.
But I think the key here is to maybe have a play around with it, experiment at different timelines and find out what works for your own business.
Exactly, what works for you, what gives you the best performance. A lot of the time you'll have to use a little bit of kind of your own knowledge of the business and your own best judgment on what the best look back windows are for your business model and what you're selling.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any final questions? I think we've one going in here now. Okay, so I think that's it for questions. So let me just switch back here. Okay, perfect. Well, listen, thank you all very much for joining. It's been a real pleasure talking to you about mobile measurement. And we look forward to seeing you again for future Academy on Air sessions in the future.
Remember, we have the attribution section next week, followed by the ACT section the week after. So today we're covering everything got to do with measuring for mobile, next week attributing correctly for mobile, and then finally, what do we do with that insights and how do we act and optimize on that?
But for now, that's it from us. So thank you very much and goodbye.
Take care.